Good afternoon. Welcome back to our afternoon session for Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026, here in the BCC conference room. Next up, we will have Public Works with item 12A. Take it away.
Thank you, everybody. Hello, commissioners and Chair Seneca. Thanks for having us here today. My name is Lorena Janeski, and I'm here with Moria Papagallo and Stephanie Davidson. And we are here for a work session to present information about the county's next phase in adopting stormwater management requirements. These regulations are required to meet state and federal stormwater management requirements. And these regulations are for the Eugene Urban Transition Area, the UTA for short. County staff has been working and meeting with city staff for the last few months, working on how best to meet the stormwater requirements and create a program that works for both jurisdictions. And even though we're here presenting, city staff is still behind the scenes working with us and remain a huge resource for us as we move forward. County staff is spearheading the project and will be the main point of contact as we move into the adoption process and then also the public outreach process. So today we want to introduce you to two sets of updates that we are proposing for the Urban Transition Area Code. So first is the new post-construction stormwater management standards for development on properties. And second are minor updates to the existing erosion prevention code that's already in that UTA code. This presentation will work to explain the different factors that are at play in the UTA and where the stormwater requirements are coming from. We're also hoping to get some board feedback from you on our staff proposals prior to proceeding to the public outreach process. Already I've said a lot that needs explaining, and so I'm going to start by just defining the UTA. So the UTA, the Urban Transition Area, is the land that's located between the city limits line and the urban growth boundary line of a city. So Springfield calls this the Urban Transition Zone, or UTZ, and you've probably heard the term urban growth boundary to apply to the urban growth boundary line and the area within, between the line and the city limits. So some cities have UTA lines that match their city limits, but Eugene and Springfield do not. So since the UTAs are outside the city limits, they fall under the political jurisdiction of us, the county. So it's our responsibility to adopt codes that govern the development on properties in the UTA. So for Eugene, we do this by adopting code in the UTA and then entering into intergovernmental agreements, or IGAs for short, with the city so that the city can administer those codes on our behalf. So one of the first questions might be then, why do we need to adopt these stormwater management codes? So the answer is the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, the MS4, our Phase 2 general permit. That's why we're here. The MS4 permit is a federal requirement, and it's coming from the Environmental Protection Agency's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, or NPDES for short, program. Because the county has stormwater systems that discharge to waters of the state, we are required to have this MS4 permit, and the city has one as well. Both MS4 permits, ours and the city's, require that the jurisdiction adopt stormwater management regulations. And these regulations protect the public stormwater system and the public waterways from pollutants. The DEQ administers these MS4 permits at the state level on behalf of the EPA, and then we have to report to the DEQ on how well we're doing on our permit. The county's MS4 permit has a number of stormwater management regulations and programs that need to be adopted, like illicit discharge, erosion prevention, post-construction, and the board has already worked with staff to adopt a number of code updates that were needed to meet the MS4 standards. Post-construction is just the next phase in all this series of adoptions. So I do want to note that last year, the county did receive a warning letter from the DEQ that we had missed our deadline to adopt the post-construction standards. And this is because our current MS4 permit just contains so many maybe new regulations or stricter regulations to what we had already had. There were a number of things that we needed to adopt, so we are running behind. But we've been in discussions with DEQ, and we've told them that we plan to have this phase of stormwater management, the adoption in the Eugene UTA, done by the end of the year. So the MS4 permit applies to MS4 areas. So MS4 areas are lands that are served by a stormwater system that is separate from the piped wastewater system. So hence the 4 S's in the name MS4. They are separate storm sewer systems. And the federal MS4 permit establishes the different MS4 areas and then delegates responsibility to the jurisdictions to meet the MS4 requirements that are in the permit. There are 3 types of MS4 areas that are shown on here. So we've got the land inside of the city limits, Eugene and Springfield. Then there's the land in the UTAs, the urban transition areas around the cities. So that's the yellow areas on the map. And then there's also the land that is solely within our jurisdiction, the county's jurisdiction, that are outside of the UTAs. Those areas are the green areas on the map. So since the Eugene UTA is not in Eugene's jurisdictional city limits, the county, we are responsible for ensuring that the MS4 regulations are adopted in the UTA. So the green areas of the map, those outside the city limits, those are areas that once we get done with the UTA adoptions, we'll have to come back to you again and adopt some regulations for the county-administered green areas for post-construction. That'll be not too long from now. So, yes. So in the Eugene UTA, outside the city limits, the county maintains intergovernmental agreements, or IGAs for short, with the city so that the city can administer the UTA code on our behalf. Eugene and the county have IGAs for building, for land use, for stormwater management like erosion prevention, and then also for compliance. And each UGA spells out the roles and responsibility of the city and of the county. Some of these UGAs are older, like the land use IGA is from clear back in 1986, but then the stormwater IGAs are much more current because they get updated as DEQ gives us new regulations that we need to adhere to. So I've explained a little bit about IGAs and UTAs, and so now let's talk a little bit about post-construction stormwater management. Runoff from developed sites that are done developing, like from a commercial building or from a home site, like shown on the slide, that's the focus of the post-construction standards. Post-construction stormwater management is the use of permanent physical facilities, improvements on a site or somewhere associated with the site to manage stormwater runoff from impervious surfaces on a property. So the purpose is to protect the public stormwater system and the waters of the state from pollution. So basically, post-construction stormwater management systems use collection and conveyance. So here's a few different ways that stormwater can be collected. And the systems use treatment, a couple different types of treatment there. And they use detention and or retention of stormwater runoff to reduce pollutants and to control discharges to public stormwater systems. Besides protecting the water quality of surface waters and groundwaters, stormwater systems are also tools that the county and the city alike can use to regulate runoffs better, to reduce flooding to properties and rights of way, and then also to protect neighboring properties from adjacent development runoff. So the term post-construction is used because the stormwater systems stay on the site after the construction is complete. So they're post the process of construction. They're not temporary facilities like erosion prevention facilities are. They stay on the site and must be maintained by the property owner for the life of the facility. And I do want to say a quick clarifying word, because I'm using the term post-construction, I'm using stormwater management, and using post-construction stormwater management. Around here, you may also hear people use stormwater management for meaning specifically post-construction. When we talk about the MS4 permit itself, they use stormwater management as an umbrella term to mean everything. Post-construction, erosion prevention, illicit discharge. So sometimes I try to say the whole word, the whole phrase, just to be clear, but if it gets confusing, just ask me. Okay. So there are lots of different types of post-construction facilities. There are rain gardens and planters and swales and soakage trenches, even trees, and then there's level spreaders and even green roofs. These all can be facilities that help to maintain water quality on a site. Some facilities are designed for stormwater to flow through them, and others are designed to hold water and then to let it infiltrate into the ground. So the county got its first MS4 permit, the official permit through DEQ, in 2004. And over the years, that permit has been updated by DEQ. Each time the permit's updated, we're required to update our county codes and programs to meet those new requirements. As a general rule, the MS4 requirements do tend to expand with each new iteration. The current 2019 permit is considerably stricter than previous permits. So a number of code and program updates have been and still are required to meet those 2019 regulations. And to date, we have worked together with the board to adopt updates to meet the current MS4 requirements for illicit discharge code. So back in 2022, the board adopted language, updated language to meet the illicit discharge requirements for the county-administered MS4 area. And it was also determined that we didn't have to do a whole lot of work for the UTAs because they were all meeting the code already. And then also we have addressed the MS4 permits erosion prevention requirements. Most recently, 2024, the board adopted erosion prevention code for the county-administered MS4 area that's outside of the UTA areas. And just an aside, last year we adopted more erosion prevention requirements. Those were not the MS4, that was the mercury total maximum daily load, or the TMDL requirements. So the TMDL and the MS4, they're two separate permit programs, but they do talk a lot to each other and they relate to each other in the requirements a lot. And they're both federal permits and they're both administered by DEQ. So for the MS4 requirements, in the Springfield UTZ and the Eugene UTA, we did not need to do any updates to meet the erosion prevention requirements. But that said, we are doing a small minor update to the erosion prevention code in the Eugene UTA, but that is meant to meet our intergovernmental agreement with City of Eugene to maintain our UTA code substantially similar to the city code. So it's just a small update to mirror one that they have recently done, or not so recently. So the other requirement from the 2019 MS4 permit that we've had to address is post-construction, so why we're here today. So far, back in 2023, the board co-adopted post-construction code with the city of Springfield for the Springfield UTZ. So Springfield UTZ is taken care of, and now we're dealing with adopting in the Eugene UTA. That's our next phase. Later, once adoption of post-construction in the UTAs is completed, then staff will concentrate on adopting post-construction in the county-administered MS4 areas outside of the UTAs. And the goal for that will be 2028. So, how do we adopt code in the Eugene UTA? I did not know. And so this was learning curve for me too, to find out. So first off, the city does not need to make any code adoptions in the UTA. It's just up to us. What we do is we take the existing code and slightly amend it to adjust any city-specific language so that it reads correctly for its location in the UTA and for the county's jurisdictional authority in the UTA and for the city's administration of the code in the UTA on our behalf. So needless to say, it can get a little tricky, and thankfully we have Stephanie Davidson, who's been helping us through adjusting the code where needed to make sure that it is substantially similar to the code that as we've agreed to in the IGA. And also, we've been working very closely with city staff to ensure that we are adopting all the code sections that they will need to administer the stormwater management code in the UTA. Once the proposed UTA code is finalized, it then gets adopted by the board in an ordinance, and there will need to be a few codified updates in lane code that will be pretty small, but they will point to the UTA code that was adopted in the ordinance. And then city and county staff will work together to determine roles and responsibilities, and then we will need to memorialize everything in an updated intergovernmental agreement. So Eugene established their post-construction stormwater code back in their city limits back in 2006, so they've had it for a little while. The county's MS4 permit had, we got ours back in 2007, and it did have stormwater management, some post-construction requirements, but they were less strict than our current MS4 permit is. And so we never really had to adopt stormwater management post-construction requirements in the UTA until now. Our current 2019 MS4 permit is stricter, so now we are having to meet these new requirements. When we do compare the Eugene Stormwater Management Code and the county's MS4 permit requirements, they are really very similar. The main difference is that the city's permitting threshold is 1,000 square feet of new and or replaced impervious. And ours is a 1/4 acre. So basically, if somebody puts in that much square footage of new or replaced hard impervious surfaces that stormwater is going to run off of, they would need to meet these post-construction requirements. In keeping with the board's co-adoption of stricter Springfield code back in 2023, and then also in keeping with the Eugene and Springfield IGA agreements to adopt the city code, we are proposing to adopt the city's 1,000 square foot threshold. So, here we go. So other reasons to adopt the city's permitting threshold are that the intent of applying city regulations to the UTA is to streamline the permitting process. So to ensure that properties within the UTA, that is to say, those properties that are most likely to annex into the city at some point, to ensure that they are more prepared to annex into the city. Adopting a UTA code that is substantially similar to the city code also maintains consistency between the two areas, the city limits and the UTA, and this consistency allows for an easier understanding of the code by applicants and designers, since they don't have to find multiple codes to know what they need to do. It allows for a more efficient and timely review by city staff, since city staff don't need to keep track of multiple codes, different codes that, and then they can perform their reviews more quickly. And the consistency between the codes also reduces perceived inequities on the part of property owners, since they aren't seeing neighboring properties right next to them have different requirements than they have. Another advantage to adopting the city codes and thresholds is that it allows for the application of the more urban-focused city code within the more urban UTA. So the UTA, it is urbanizing. Many properties are small and close together. Many properties are commercial or industrial. The aerial here shows all three areas, the city limits, the UTA area, and the county. And you can't really tell the difference between the city limits and the UTA areas. They look a lot the same. They're very urban. So adopting the city code in the more urban UTA is the most appropriate action for the type of development that will be seen in the UTA. The county properties, on the other hand, they definitely look a little different. There are definitely county properties that are smaller and are closer together, but a lot of properties are larger, more rural. So when we do get around to adopting the post-construction code for the county administered areas outside of the UTAs, we'll definitely be looking at having a code and manual guidelines that will be much more rural focused. So I wanted to talk just quickly about post-construction operations and maintenance, because this is one thing we're still talking with the city about and how to manage this. One of the MS4 permit requirements is that post-construction stormwater facilities, like rain gardens and swales and even catch basins, that they are maintained by the property owner, and they have to be maintained for the life of the facility. So jurisdictions have to have an O&M, operations and maintenance, tracking and monitoring program. And this is a requirement for both the city's permit and for ours. And the city and county staff were talking through roles and responsibilities for long-term O&M. And once we do come back to see the board for first reading, we should have a proposal on how that will be managed. Now, besides the post-construction updates for the Eugene UTA, we also need to make a few minor updates to the existing erosion prevention code in the UTA. The county adopted Eugene's erosion prevention code in the UTA way back in 2004. And we entered into an IGA with the city so that the city could administer the code on the county's behalf. And back in 2016, the city made some minor updates to their erosion code. They clarified a permitting threshold, and it was some smaller word changes that really didn't change the meaning, just clarifications. But for some reason, the county did not follow suit to update our UTA code at that time. So along with the post-construction changes and new code that we're proposing, we also would like to go back in and update our erosion prevention code to meet the UTA code, to meet the city code, so that we are in compliance with our IGAs. So as a part of this whole process, we will be having a public outreach process. And once we finalize our draft code, then we will be reaching out to stakeholders, sending out emails. We will have handouts at the customer service centers for both the city and the county, and then there will be information online. We still will be the primary point of contact throughout the process, but so notices on the city website will point them to our information on the county website. And a quick rough schedule here. We will finalize the code and then initiate the public outreach process, and we're planning on taking about a month for that, see how it goes. And then we'll move on to the Lane County Planning Commission. The post-construction requirements are found in the city's land use code. We'll have adoptions, codified notes in our land use code, so we will be going to Lane County Planning Commission. These are permanent improvements on properties. That will be late summer, and then in the fall, we plan to come back to the board for the first reading and public hearing. And our goal is to have the new post-construction requirements adopted by the end of the year, as we told DEQ in our response to their warning letter that they sent us. So I want to say thank you to everybody. And I know that all this is a little bit complicated, but so to summarize, we're looking for some feedback from you, if you have any, on plans to update the Eugene UTA code with the new post-construction stormwater management code, and then the minor updates to the existing erosion prevention code. And both these updates would produce code that is substantially similar to the city code, and would also be in accordance with past board adoptions and with the city and county's stormwater and land use IGAs. So thank you again. I have one pretty slide at the end. That will end. So thank you, everybody, and we welcome any feedback that you may have.
Mr. Farr.
I love your pictures. I'm making an album of them.
I have to admit that some of them cannot be published. I found them online, but they were wonderful, so.
Okay. Darn. You know,
But this one isn't. This one's ours.
you know, making it easier for people to build is, you know, one of the ways to make it less expensive to build, for instance. And something that you pointed out that really maybe isn't evident regarding county codes matching city codes, even when city codes may exceed what the county may typically have. We're looking in the MS4 area, and as compared to the urban transition area. It makes a great deal of sense that the big thing to me is looking over your fence and saying, hey, I didn't have to do that. Well, that eliminates that, doesn't it?
Yes, yes.
And
being like a frontline person too at the counter as customers come in, both at the city, I have been at the city and at the county,
yeah.
that, we hear that often.
And really, people like that more than anything else, I think, is that they're being treated on the same, you know, with the same, same set of rules.
Yeah.
And I love that part about that. You know, the other thing that we always bemoan is how much it costs to build housing. How much, you know, we're talking right now about how far we are behind on schedule. And all of these things that we do, which are necessary, applaudable, make it more expensive to build housing. And we've been doing it for years and years, decades. I started as a Eugene City Councilor in '95. They'd been doing it before I got there. Not wholesale and not without reason, but the net result is housing is more and more expensive, particularly inside of UGBs and areas such as the MS4 area.
Yes.
And it's I'm not saying it's not necessary, but always highlighting that wherever we can avoid increasing the cost of housing, that's what we're all committed to. So that being said, we're looking inside the MS4 area. The one thing that piqued me was, as a homeowner, I'm buying a new home, and there's some houses right next to where mine are about 10 years newer that have a swale or a containment area built into their planting strip. And what you're saying is that it's the homeowner's responsibility to maintain that.
There can be different approaches. So some, like a subdivision, might have shared systems that are in the more public areas so that the properties don't have to have anything on their property, and then they pay into association fees or whatever to maintain the system holistically. There's that. There have been, I think, maybe some instances, maybe not so much anymore, where some private facilities were allowed in the public right-of-way, but that's few and far between,
Sure.
if ever.
I live in a place called Avalon Village where we have a large reclamation area right in the middle. It's wonderful. You're not allowed to go in there, but you don't need to go in there. It's just a nice central park in the middle of a neighborhood, you know. But in the adjacent neighborhood, which is the Weikert facility to the west of Avalon Village, wonderful houses, and they have they look overgrown, but I guess depends on what weed seeds land in there, right?
They're supposed to be maintained, so
By-
the idea is that they won't get a whole lot of weeds, but yes, they do tend to need care. But then also the idea is too, though, that they're not going to look very ornamental. They're not going to be lollipopped or anything like that. They're going to look a little more real so that then they can do more work to clean the water.
And I cycle through there all the time. It's just, I mean, it's half a block up from my house, and it really is wonderful. I mean, you get a feeling of almost of being in the country inside of a
Yes, they
urban
can definitely do
neighborhood,
that.
and it feels good. I worry about what if my 6-year-old grandchild trips over that curb and lands face down inside of one.
The idea is that when they are designed, that they will have some protection, so the curbing, and then a lot of them it depends on the design. Some of them do have walls that maybe go down, but then some others may have an area that is more flat alongside before they get to the dip. In the
Does
design.
the homeowner then assume the liability of injuries inside of that?
I can't address that. I don't know.
You can't, okay.
Sorry.
I'm presuming they do if they're responsible for the maintenance of it, and I'm
If
responsible for
I
mine.
was, I don't know, I don't want to say anything
Okay,
that's wrong.
no, I shan't.
Okay.
No more questions on that. But then adjacent to that is a public area. There's a swale that runs between two streets and in between the houses over their back fences, and it looks horrible. I mean, it's got not just, it's got cottonwoods growing in it, it's got no vine maples, but shrubbery, a lot of Himalayan blackberry all up and down in there.
Okay.
Who's responsible for that?
Well, they have, I don't know what that system is, or if it even is one that is an official post-construction facility. But each one would have an operations and maintenance plan that describes how to maintain it, and how often, and about weeding and all sorts of stuff. So the idea is that the property owner, or whoever's in charge, is responsible for keeping those things maintained per that O&M plan.
Got it.
And so then the jurisdiction has to have that O&M program that keeps an eye on all the systems out there. So for us, once we get into, as we start up, like especially out in our county administered area, we'll have a few and it'll be easy to watch. But then once you start getting hundreds and thousands, they get a little tougher. And so maybe it is one that just needs a little more attention right now.
And needing attention is, as long as everybody knows what the rules are. You know, I don't tend to look over my 6.5 foot bike fence because it's not my area. But if I look over there and I determine that really is my responsibility to take care of it, even though I look over there once a year. I mean, some of these folks throw the grass clippings over there, you know, I mean, I think that's been standard practice in cities for a lot of years, but you can't do that, can you?
Not supposed to.
Not supposed to. So I'm just trying to get a grasp on how viable is this for the long term, or at what point does my neighborhood, when I'm not living there anymore, just look like a place, who designed this? Because look at that, what's that between those fences right there? Because nobody maintained it and nobody saw to it that they were maintaining it. This is in a jurisdiction where if you have a property crime, they ask you to fill out a form online. So we're going to take care of wastewater stormwater facilities and not take care of property crimes?
Well, what I can say about the city, I mean, and it's been a little while since I've been at the city. There are many swales and waterways that run through the neighborhoods that are not post-construction stormwater management facilities.
Sure, yeah.
So then those get maintained differently and have different programs with different groups within the city versus the official post-construction facilities. So if this were a real post-construction facility, say at the county, so that'd be something that we would hope that if we ran afoul of keeping an eye on it, that you would call and let us know. And then it is our responsibility once it's a county program and county O&M program, then it's our responsibility to make sure that it gets maintained. So then one of the requirements in the MS4 permit is that there be compliance. And so we would have a program that we would need to follow, then steps to follow to make sure that there's compliance. And so maybe one of the final steps is if we don't get adherence by whoever is responsible, then we go on to compliance.
So I call Dan and say, hey, Dan, who do I call about this? So, because I'm presuming it's public works.
And that's what happens, because we'll have people call in to the main number, and then we get emails that get sent out to these various offices, you know, for us, for the county. And it's like, oh, somebody saw wastewater, you know, dripping, you know, in the ditch or whatever. And so then everybody's like, snap.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I love it. You know, like I said, I'm taking an album of your pictures, and my son and his wife just bought a house in South Eugene, and they have what really is a rain garden because everything flows into their backyard. And I'm looking at these photos saying, hey, it can look great, can't it? As long as it's maintained.
And I didn't include some of there's some photos, I mean, you can get really fun and funky.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some that are very architectural, and you get some that are at commercial sites, you know, and they want it to look more architectural, and then some people really want the thing that looks more, you know, this is Eugene, we're hippies.
It grew like it wanted to grow, right?
Yeah.
Well, wonderful presentation, thank you. You made everything very understandable, especially
I hope so.
Yeah, you did. Well, and also the understanding that if Lane County adopts codes in the MS4 area that really seem very strict because they're matching the city of Eugene, there's a very good reason for that.
Yes.
It's not
really
just arbitrary.
is.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So who do I call, Dan?
Mr. Lovell caught my eye earlier. Did you have something?
It looks like Dan's going to answer a question, but I'll go after him. Thank you,
Okay.
Chair.
Chair, I just wanted to add, it does bring up the issue of stormwater funding. So in the cities, residents pay a stormwater fee that helps support the program, and so then they have inspectors that can keep an eye on these and make sure that they're being maintained. In the county, we don't have that, and so that's a challenge as we build out our stormwater program. And it's something we should discuss, is particularly as we adopt post-construction code outside of the UTA.
UCA, in transition.
Because right now, we're just paying for this program kind of through different pieces. The challenge with post-construction is we can't use road fund dollars for that. And so we're charging that out to our different divisions in Public Works where we think it's appropriate. So I think for this particular program, it's being charged out to our Land Management Division, and they're challenged financially as well. And so it's just something that we need to have further conversations around about this funding of our stormwater program as this builds out.
I'm a lot clearer now than I was 35 minutes ago. Thank you.
Okay. That was my goal. Thank you.
Mr. Lovell.
Yeah, either we're getting the hang of this lingo or you're getting a lot better explaining it, but I'm going to probably refer to the latter. So, yeah, thank you very much. The questions I have is the same questions we asked the 9 times you visited us in erosion control. Are we going more than the minimum that the DEQ is asking us to do? That's the first question I have.
Then the MS4 permit, then the DEQ is asking, yes, but not based upon our intergovernmental agreements with the city, because we have intergovernmental agreements that say we will adopt substantially similar code to the city code.
Okay, I understand the rationale thinking of the places of I guess the transition zone we're talking about that look like every other city block and street. I understand the similarity that it would be nice, like Commissioner Farr said, not look over your fence and say, oh, you didn't have to do that, but I did. So I get that, and reluctantly, I'm on board with that. I don't like it, but I'm on board with it. The thing that I have the most question and concern about is, all of the discussion and headache that you bore and that we had on the erosion control thing. It seems like we're revisiting that, coming back to a pre-construction revisitation and changing what we originally decided. And so the ask is to adopt, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, the ask is to adopt updates to the pre-construction erosion controls that we put in, that we mandated to be at the minimum level, but now we're going to up those to a stricter level. Is that my understanding that of the erosion control minor updates that we're talking about?
No, sorry. So the minor erosion control updates we're talking about now are to just the UTA code. So when we were here for those 8-9 meetings before, that was for the erosion prevention code that's in our county administered area outside of the UTAs. And we're not touching that. So that remains what was approved back in 2024. We're not changing that. All we're doing is updating the UTA code so that it matches the city code. And we're not changing, and we're not making it any stricter. All they did was update some verbiage to make it clearer, and then they added in a threshold for cubic footage that was something that, because they only had the square footage, I believe, threshold before. So it was just minor changes that they had added in.
So then, go ahead, Maria.
I was just going to add, I went back to the map. So what we previously had done is in the dark green areas.
Right.
Yes.
And what we're
talking about the
working on
yellow.
now is the yellow outside of the Eugene settlements.
And the green areas don't change.
Right. So the operation and maintenance of, I guess, the enforcement piece, does that have a funding mechanism at this point, or are we still up in there about that?
We are still in discussions with the city. Possibilities are that they could take on O&M for the facilities that are in the UTA. Possibility is that they would want us to do that. And so then, if it's us, then we have to figure that out.
Yeah, and then lastly, I want to say this on your comment. I had, it's really interesting you explained this. I had a constituent call me about a month ago about a swale that the city of Springfield updated on a corner. It was right across from Coastal Farm and Hardware, which is next to Jerry's. They live across the street to the west of that.
Okay.
And the city came in and updated the corner because it needed more visibility and put one of those swales in. And then when it grew up weeds and all that, the city came back on the homeowner who had just bought the house and said, oh, this is your responsibility to maintain it. So I think going forward in those transitional areas, I think it would behoove the county to make sure that we have an accurate inventory of whose responsibility is what. So if there's no confusion, because this person was I think she was in a day or two of being fined by the city of Springfield for not cleaning up her swale, if you will, if we're going to call it that. And she had no idea, that it was her responsibility or why, and it was, a substantial amount of fines. So I think that's something that we really need to clean up for our constituents.
Agreed.
To make sure that's in order. So anyway, yeah, thank
And I
you.
would want to know that as I go forward in the program too.
Yeah, good.
Commissioner Trigger. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
can just add
Please.
to that. A standard process for both City of Springfield and City of Eugene. They're trying to increase awareness, especially when properties change hands. And there is, I'm gonna mess up this term, a notice to on the deed, or the title of the property. How detailed you look at the title of your property is its own challenge, but that is a requirement to be notified as part of that there is a stormwater facility on that property.
Yeah, no, agreed. I think there's some holes in the sales process of real estate. I mean, we've encountered properties that the title deed says one particular, elevation and standard numbers, and the overlays that you see online are different for some scribbler error or something. So we've had those as well. So yeah, you're right. Some cleanup needs to happen in that area.
Thank you. Yeah, those disclosures, right, takes a few iterations to catch up because a current owner might not know something, so they don't disclose it because they don't know it. And then the new owner finds out, and then when they sell the property, they have to disclose it. But my questions, briefly, commercial and residential, any difference between the two as far as requirements or options for design? And then regarding design, who gets to select what that is? Do folks at the county who are part of the construction process help recommend or guide on that design?
Okay. There are some times where people call me and ask about things in the city or in the county, and I help as much as I can. We don't design it for them, but they do have to design. There are lots of different types of systems that can be used. And so it's up to them to figure out how they want to use the property. I always tell people, where are the trees that you want to save? You don't want to be putting some rain garden right next to your favorite tree. And so it's up to them to figure out how they want to fit something in. And some people will end up, say, even on a house, they might put something more structural, like with concrete walls, just to make sure it's contained, I know where it is, and it's easy to deal with. And other people want something more like a swale and maybe like a dry riverbed and all sorts of nifty stuff. And so it totally depends then on the designer, on the homeowner. Commercial and industrial properties and residential are treated about the same, but DEQ understands that runoff coming off of residential roofs is going to be cleaner than runoff coming off of an industrial commercial roof. And so there is a little more leeway here and there with residential than there is for commercial. And so I've been out of that review for a while, so I can't talk too much to the intricacies, but the city has a stormwater management manual, which is a pretty substantial document with drawings, information, guidelines on how to design all these different systems and the minimum size they need to be for how much water is going to them, that sort of thing. And the city staff, and then once we have a program too, our staff would be as helpful as we can without designing it for them.
Great. And this is all, because it's post-construction, this is part of the construction process, so this is all new construction as of? There's no backtracking to install such things in existing properties, right?
There is no backtracking. Now, in the city limits, so the city has stormwater utility fees. And so some people, especially commercial properties, they may do some voluntary backtracking to put in a system because they can get, within the city limits, some reduction in their monthly stormwater fees. We don't have stormwater fees yet, but that's something that does happen, but it's not something that once we have a program or once we adopt for the UTA, we're not gonna be backtracking. It will be from new projects on.
And so finally, given that it's new, where in the process, in the permitting and all of that, does the arrangement, the understanding this is part of the deal now for new construction and your designs, do you have to submit your plan the way you would other plans for review? Where does this fit into the overall permitting process for?
So as it gets closer to adoption, the city staff will be letting customers know as they come in to talk to them about projects. And then that review, the stormwater review, happens at the same time as the review for building and land use. And so people have to submit plans that show all their grading, all their stormwater management at the same time as everything else.
So it won't get tacked on at the end as a surprise. Somebody knows this is part
It
of the
does
deal
not.
when they're building
It's
up
from
front.
the very
Great, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I think all that made sense to me. Some of the stuff I have, my questions were covered. A lot of the things with the deeds is someone in my head, LARs are fresh and people not knowing they live on LARs and then finding out later. And so something we want to be cognizant of for sure. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, great.
Thank you very much.
everybody.
Appreciate it. Okay. I'll read us.
And then take just a brief break for Jessica to switch over and me to grab about a handful of lawyers.
Yeah, we'll do 5-10 minutes or something.
Thank you.
Be plenty of time. Okay. Today is Tuesday, June 2nd, 2026, and the time is 2:17. Board of County Commissioners will now meet in one executive session. This session is to consider informational records that are exempt by law from public inspection and to consult with counsel concerning the legal rights and duties of a public body with regard to current litigation or litigation likely to be filed. It is held pursuant to ORS 192-660-2F and ORS 192-660-2E, which allow the Board of Commissioners to meet in executive session for the purposes listed. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are precluded from attending. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any deliberations during the executive session except to state the general subject of the session as previously announced. Members of the news media are not allowed to tape, video record, or otherwise record an executive session. Verbatim notes are prohibited. No decision may be made in executive session. We may return to regular session today after the conclusion of the executive session if needed. In the Board of County Commissioners conference room. If we do not need to return to public session today, the next regular session of the Board of County Commissioners will convene at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, June 9th in Harris Hall. We will adjourn at 2:25. Does that work?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay.
Sorry.
Welcome back to the Lane County Board of Commissioners meeting for June 2nd, 2026. And we have a statement.
Thank you, Chair. The majority of the Board of County Commissioners is reaffirming the county's continued commitment to the Clean Lane project, including pursuing final land use approval for the Goshen site. Additionally, the county reaffirms its desire to potentially shift the project site from Goshen to Short Mountain. The county reaffirms its prior direction to County Council to continue to pursue a contract amendment that shifts the project location and schedule to Short Mountain without burdening the county with additional obligations that are not contained in the current Clean Lane contract, what one might call a clean amendment. Council?
Thank you, Commissioner. Are there any further questions for any of us here or anything we ought to discuss? I think that concludes what we need here today.
Okay, that will conclude our Lane County Board of Commissioners meeting for June 2nd. We will see you back on the night. Thank you.